Hello and thank you for tuning in to Millennium Movies. This is going to be my spoiler-filled review of The Grudge 2020. So if you haven't seen the movie, please beware. I'm going to be spoiling the hell out of it for you right now. So let's go ahead and get right into some of the positives because there's not very many positives. There's a lot of negatives. So I want to get the positives out the way first. And the positives, I will say that director Nicholas Pest, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but I think that he did a good job with the direction and the camera operating, and the visuals in this movie are really good actually. There's a lot of wonderful shots and a lot of pretty shots. It's not an ugly movie by any stretch. It's a very pretty looking movie. It's it's nice to look at, and so I'll praise him for that. And the cast as well does the best that they can with what they're given. Lin Shaye from the Insidious movies, John Cho is awesome. Again, like I just mentioned, Demian Bashir is really good. Andrea Riseborough as the lead character of Detective Muldoon, she did a really good job, I thought. I wasn't expecting that performance just because I haven't seen her in anything else, but she did a very good job as the lead character. But other than the cast and the visuals and the direction wise of the camera operating, there isn't very much positive things to say about The Grudge. Unfortunately, this was a movie that I was actually I was pretty positive on and going into it, and I was looking forward to it, even though that I was giving it the benefit of the doubt. But unfortunately, it didn't live up to that benefit of the doubt, and there's a lot of problems with this movie. And the reason why I'm so disappointed with it and underwhelmed is because I can see the potential in the screenplay. I could see the potential for greatness for a great horror movie in bits and pieces of this movie, but unfortunately, a lot of the things that they set up and present to us just don't wrap around in a nice little bow at the end of the film, and some things just end up getting dropped, and it feels weird that they do because this movie's only an hour and 33 minutes long. It's a short movie, but when you're watching it, it really doesn't feel like that. I found this interesting. Just last night, I watched The King on Netflix with Timothy Chalamet, and that movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long. And that movie flew by to me. I mean, I was like, "What? This movie's over?" That's because it kept me engaged, and I was having such a good time. And this movie is, nearly an hour and a half shorter than that movie. And this movie felt like it was dragging, man. I was like, "All right, are we getting close to the end now?" And I haven't had that feeling in a theater in a very long time. So that's not a good thing. Again, I want to speak. While I did praise Nicholas, the director, on his cinematography and just the camera operating and the direction, I cannot give him enough praise on the screenplay because the screenplay. There's some obvious things that are being set up. Like again, as soon as when the little boy of Detective Muldoon is saying that he's scared in the beginning of the movie, she tells him, "What do we do when we're scared? We close our eyes and we count to five." Immediately, maybe that's just because I'm a screenwriter and I'm in college and going to classes for film right now. Maybe it's just I can see it easier, but as soon as they say that, it's like, oh, okay, here's the obvious setup for we can use that little archetype, that little trope right there, and we'll put it in in an area for another scare later in the movie. It just feels like a gimmick, so I don't like those little things like that. And and again, like I said, I was digging the first 20 minutes of this movie, but then after that, the pace is just so slow and borderline boring throughout the entire second half or like second act and even beginning of the third act of this movie. I mean, even the conclusion of this movie isn't satisfying for what we just witnessed. So again, I think basically what The Grudge is going to end up being remembered as for me is a bunch of empty promises and being left unfulfilled. Because again, like I said, even though there's a great cast of characters, I don't think that they were used to their fullest potential. We've seen Lin Shaye in a great horror movie. We've seen her in the Insidious movies, and in this movie, she doesn't really get much to do other than, oh, you're a crazy possessed woman from Ju-on and The Grudge, right? That's all she does. She just plays this very crazy woman, and she does a good job with it. But of course, it's just not the most interesting thing to look at. I mean, these are things that we've seen in other horror movies before. Oh, you got to go to the crazy person who nobody believes about this case, and now he's in a mental asylum. Oh, but he holds the key to possibly figuring this out. we've seen these sort of tropes in horror movies, and a lot of the scares in this movie as well, unfortunately, are just not very inspiring. They're not very original. They're things that we've seen before. You've seen it in a dime a dozen horror movies before. The coolest scare in this movie is in the first minute, the opening minute. There's a moment where this woman is talking on her phone outside of the original Grudge house, which is cool to see. I'll admit that. But she's outside of the house and she's on the phone, and then there's a bunch of trash bags outside, and she looks at the trash bag and she starts to see that something inside the trash bag is breathing, and it almost looks like the bag itself is breathing. And then a small little arm, a small little pale arm pops out from one of the bags and grabs her. That was really cool, but unfortunately, that's in the first minute of the movie, and it doesn't get any better than that. So again, I just think it's a lot of unfulfilledness with this movie. A lot of things just didn't go anywhere. Again, I want to say too, speaking of Lin Shaye not being used to her full potential, John Cho, who I was led to believe was going to be the protagonist of this movie, he doesn't do very much. I mean, he's just there to further the case, to further show evidence that, oh hey, there's something wrong with this house, because Lin Shaye's character got killed, John Cho's character got killed, all these other people got killed. Well, yeah, I really didn't like that. I thought he was going to have more to do with the story. He was really just there. He was just there to die. That's all he was there for. He didn't. They didn't give him enough to be his own fully fledged character. The only fully fledged character I thought in this movie was played by Demian Bashir's character, and then he just ends up going nowhere. It's just a loose thread. They never tie it. They never tie it up. Like I was saying in the beginning of this review, is that they set up a lot of cool things in the very beginning, but then they just never came back around to it. So his whole character is basically that, his mother was really sick. She died of cancer, and then he started to he's got like a bunch of he's got a bunch of religious stuff around his house and inside his car, and he's wearing a crucifix, and that's, as he's talking about, as he's getting older now, he wants to believe in these sort of things and believe in a higher power. And then, of course, the whole thing with the Grudge is that, the Grudge preys on the weak. She preys on the innocent, the people who are vulnerable to being taken over. So that's something that, if he would have gone in the house, because basically the whole thing is with the Grudge, the curse being put on you is once you enter into the house, the Grudge grabs a hold of you and never lets go. And again, it preys on your weaknesses. So his weakness would have been, of course, that he can't get over the death of his mother. But he never goes into the house, and that's a thing that's set up very early and talked about and thrown at us throughout the entire movie, that, oh, hey, he never goes in there. That's weird that a cop would never go into the crime scene. So again, like, that is set up, but it never goes anywhere, because you think, okay, his mother got really sick and died. Okay, his partner in this detective, his detective partner, went into the house and got really obsessed with the case and got cursed, and then he ended up going crazy and tried to kill himself. So he has this personal history with the Grudge, but yet he never deals with it. I mean, at the end of the movie, Detective Muldoon burns the house thinking that will somehow stop the curse. But then she just ends up taking the curse back with her to her house, and that's where the new curse will be born, and then she just dies. Well, what happened to Demian Bashir's character? We just completely forgot about him in the last 10-15 minutes of the movie, when he was playing such a vital part of the story. It just really makes you think, well, why have him in the movie in the first place? Just to say, hey, oh, he never stepped in the house, so he's never going to die. Well, shouldn't he have been the one to stop the Grudge in the end, or at least help Detective Muldoon in playing a bigger part in stopping the Grudge and the curse? Again, these are just things that, again, just didn't lead anywhere, and unfortunately, it just feels like a lot of setup that wasn't paid off in the end. And I'm surprised that it wasn't paid off, because this movie is only an hour and a half, and yet it feels so long. So, I don't know. The Grudge definitely feels like a January movie. I would definitely save my money if you're a horror fan and just wait to watch another horror movie for this month. Again, I mentioned it in my horror movies that are coming out in January video, which you can actually watch on the channel right now. Underwater is coming out next week. That's the Kristen Stewart movie in the ocean with the weird alien creatures. And then there's The Turning with Finn Wolfhard. There's Gretel and Hansel with Sophia Lillis. there's plenty more horror to watch in January that I think has a lot more promise than The Grudge. So this is not a movie that I would recommend you watch. I mean, if you're a huge horror buff fan, maybe check it out, but if you really are a huge horror fan, this movie's not going to provide you with anything that you haven't already seen in countless of other, B-level horror movies. And I wouldn't even call The Grudge a B-level horror movie. This is probably, honestly, this is a D plus at best. It's just average. It's mediocre. So, yeah, this has been my review on The Grudge, and I'm thinking of just calling this series of movie reviews for horror movies. I'm thinking of just calling it the Is It Scary series. Excuse me, and I think we'll see where this series of horror movie reviews takes us in the future. But until next time, guys, this has been Millennium Movies, and I will see you all very soon.